Hello, Sadie. Thank you very much for agreeing to talk to VitrA's design update on the Quality of Life Foundation. Could you tell me, other than chairing the foundation, what are the other things that you do?
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. What else do I do? Gosh, I do lots of things. So as well as setting up and founding the foundation, I have a founding director of DRMM Architects, and I sit on the board of Homes England. I'm a National Infrastructure Commissioner, a professor at Westminster, design advocate for the Mayor of London, and various other things. But that's probably enough.
Okay, thank you. So you established the Quality of Life Foundation, I think, at the end of last year.
Yes.
With the aim of improving people's quality of life by focusing on built environments. Can you talk a bit about the aims of the foundation and what led you to set it up in the first place?
Sure. I mean, I think that I'm absolutely passionate about trying to improve people's quality of life. You know, that's why, as one of the founding directors of DRMM, that's something we've always strived to do, kind of make transformational change. And again, in all the other roles that I have a part of, it's that, I believe that great design, can change lives. But also understanding what are the fundamentals, what's the sort of food and water of the built environment. And when we talk about our homes in particular, what is it about them that improves the quality of life? So what I hope to do is to encourage the building industry, developers, to really try to understand from the residents, from the consumer's point of view, what really matters. So it might not be the fact that it has a pitch roof or a flat roof, is traditional or modern, but it might be that it might be some more fundamental things that are super important. So one of the first things we did with the foundation was just to do a literature review. We went out and tried to not reinvent the wheel. There's lots of information about this already, and the most interesting piece, the outcome of the research, was that no one actually asks residents. We ask the sort of great and the good and the professionals and the professors and all of these, but we don't actually ask people. So that's lesson number one. And then the outcome of the research is that things like a sense of control is really important. People want to feel that they have a chance and an opportunity to have a say. Green space, access to green space. Now, there's no surprise. I think over the sort of this awful COVID period, we've all realised how important it is to have some sense of that you have an opportunity to be a part of your natural environment. Freedom of movement, a sense of belonging is really important. Fun and wonder, making sure that we are. Our lives have some sort of joyful element to them. All of these things are important, and I think if carefully thought about, the built environment can help shape those things.
So that's the context that sort of led you to setting up the foundation.
Yes, I mean, it was about, if we could really understand the fundamentals, if we could make sure they are included, if we could get to a situation where you have a quality of life developer, or for instance, if you're a local authority, you say, I want to work with developers or people who really embed the quality of life principles in what they build, then then we might begin to start to see some real improvements.
Yeah. I mean, the message about well-being being central to buildings and spaces is something that in the architectural context actually feels quite disruptive in a positive sense. I mean, obviously it oughtn't to be, and it always should have been a central focus of architecture. But it'd be interesting to know how the foundation actually defines well-being, whether it's more about physical health or psychological well-being.
I think for the work of the foundation, what we're really trying to do is to say it's a sort of mix of everything. How does your environment make you feel? Do you feel happy, sad? Do you feel disconnected? Do you feel connected with with your neighbours, with your community? Do you feel safe and secure? Or do you feel vulnerable and scared? Do you, do you feel that you have enough opportunity to be surrounded by nature or not? All of those things. It's a very those sort of intuitive and the sort of sense of well-being, I think, is what we're really trying to strive to. But how that ties back into your built environment is something that isn't, there's a lot of research around it, but we're not really making that connection yet. We're not really thinking about how we build and why we build it with those glasses on, with that sort of focus in mind, which is I think one of the things that we're really trying to sort of highlight.
So are you saying that there's perhaps a bit of a missing link between the research community around architecture and the actual people who are practicing as architects?
I think we can't. I mean, it's not necessarily all down to the architects. Projects are very much a part of that. There's sort of that everybody, the community that's involved in them. Architects, I think, have always had a very deep sense of responsibility to the people who use their buildings. Yes, we're interested in context and form and all of those things, but I think good architecture practices have always really thought hard about how the sort of built form affects the people who live, work, play in their buildings. So it's not as if we've not been thinking about it. I just think that that focus, or that it hasn't always been given the priority that it should have been given. And as we move into a future where I think we're looking for sort of little bit of shift amongst the way that we operate, the way that we live, as we leave lockdown, we want to take the lessons that we've learned. We want to think a bit better about our work-life balance. All of those things are part of a story that and a set of a sort of framework within which I think if we start to if we sort of shift, if we make a sort of gentle shift in the way that we think, plan, deliver our housing and homes, then we will make big improvements to people's quality of life.
So presumably the focus of the foundation's research is kind of more along the qualitative side of things than the quantitative.
It's a little bit of both, but what we're trying to do is do research that is different and really just tries to unpick what that is. Yes, how does your environment make you feel, but also we need to be able to sort of translate that into a better understanding of what that looks like. What does good look like? So if we can, one of the big pieces of work we're doing is a sort of feedback loop, is a sort of app which says which allows communities to feed their thoughts and their wishes throughout the process from beginning to end, and a sort of trust pilot, if you like, for development. And what we want, the reason we want to do that is because then we'll start to collect data. Then if you have a 4-star development or a 5-star development, why is that? What makes that good? And then we can start to unlock a little bit around, well, people here think that their quality of life is improved or better. What are the things that we can do? What are the physical things that we can do to help encourage that to happen in other developments?
So it is about quantity of data in a way. It's about collecting a kind of knowledge bank of
absolutely. Absolutely. And best practice. This is about encouraging industry to do better. It's not it's about saying, if you make these changes, if you think about these things, you're going to improve people's lives. Now, why wouldn't you want to do that?
There also seems to be a focus on, in general in the foundation, is longer term thinking about the built environment. and about caring for as well as creating new homes and communities in the first place. Do you think this is addressing something of a gap in our collective understanding about what built fabric actually needs in terms of nurture over time?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that if you have an interest or a stake in something over the long term, you care about it a lot, more than you do if you build it and then you leave. So, the sort of master developer role, or those, you can see it with the great estates, in London, those who look after and nurture, their properties over time.
And their people.
Yeah, exactly. And their people, you tend to engender long-term trust, pride in your built environment, your communities start to look after and want to make sure that their spaces are, and their public realm and their gardens or the public spaces are clean and tidy, and they're proud. They'd like to know their neighbours, and all of those things start to really embed themselves into becoming a very strong and resilient place. Yeah. And so if so absolutely, the answer is yes. The longer term, the more that you're involved over the long term, I think inevitably the better things will be.
So time is a really important factor.
Yes, I think so. And I think we have to appreciate that, we can build something and it looks fabulous and, we think it's ticked all the boxes, but unless we really take the time and trouble to go back and say, has this worked? We had this brilliant vision. We had this great idea. What's the reality really like? Professionals aren't, they don't like criticism. So the practices or the industry tends to not necessarily want to ask those questions because because they might not get the answers they like. But if we're brave enough to do that, and if we offer the opportunity, then that will help us improve, because you can only improve if you learn not only by your successes but yet by your mistakes.
Yeah. So it sounds as if it's partly about, as well as asking people what they want, it's also reflective, and it's a form of post-occupancy evaluation.
Absolutely. Which if it happens, it tends to happen, within the first 6 months. But actually, if you could do that over time, if you could, as you say, if you could say over 2, 5, 7, 10 years, and we could start to collect a national database which says, actually, these things seemed shiny, new and wonderful, but within 10 years, because of X and Y, actually it all went wrong, or this didn't look, it may not have won all the architectural prizes, but it's been incredibly successful. Over this period of time, the community really feels together, everybody feels well looked after, and all the things that matter to them have managed to be a part of this particular development. Why is that? And I think then we will be in a position to really use that data in a very positive way, and in a way to affect change and for better.
So perhaps it's about sharing data, perhaps more than it has been shared in the past.
Yeah, I think we need to. With the climate crisis that's happening, with sort of post-COVID, I think if there's one thing that we've learned is that collective, working together to overcome big problems or to overcome anything is a positive. And I really hope that those are the types of lessons we learn, which is to say, we all need to collectively help to bring the industry up to best practice. It's not good enough just to be one of the better developers. You have a responsibility to sort of help nurture and encourage those who may not produce such exemplar projects, you know, to do so.
Yeah. I was wondering how the COVID-19 crisis might have affected this work of the foundation. Maybe particularly in terms of addressing the sort of longer term psychological impacts of it, but also the shifts in human behaviour around social distancing and hygiene.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think what it's done is highlight the need to ask these questions and to say, actually, you know, we do need to encourage conversations that aren't just about the built form. You know, there are other things that that need to be included, whether it be community, as you say, whether it be access to green space, whether it be, you know, a work-life balance, you know, the sort of sense of hygiene, cleanliness. You know, that's at the moment that's very much tied in with feeling safe and secure.
Yeah.
You know, so things, you know, there will be long-term repercussions. You know, I don't think we're all going to suddenly stop washing our hands or thinking that we can't touch the doorknob, or, you know, it will take us time, and I think that there will be a legacy of that will come out of this crisis, as I said, and we need to think hard about, you know, how to encourage people to not worry, not be anxious, to make sure that you know, if they are you know, that their built environment, that the sort of shift in the way perhaps they're working or needing to isolate or operate is done so in a way that isn't doesn't affect it doesn't mean that there's long-term damage.
And what are the sort of immediate next steps for the foundation? What are your plans for the rest of 2020?
Well, what we're in the process of doing is formulating the research that we've done. So we've gone out for a nationwide piece of research. So we hope to sort of put together the framework, if you like, the quality of life framework. What are those things? You know, we've talked a little bit about a few of them, but what are those things that matter? Can we articulate them in a way that allows developers, communities to pick them up? We're developing an app that allows that feedback loop to happen, that's intuitive, that's sort of light-footed, and we hope will draw upon the framework that we've researched so hard to put together, and will allow communities to have input right from the beginning of the planning process, but not stopping, you know, once planning has been achieved, but allowing that feedback loop throughout the development, the life of the development, the occupancy, and thereafter. So that's something we're very, very excited about, because nothing like it exists. And we think that it will be a real positive addition to you know, to the kind of process of building communities.
How does it work? Is it presumably it's aimed at residents? Do people have to sign up for it, or how are you?
I think that we don't know yet. It's kind of part of a you know, we're sort of in the process of putting it together. I'd
like to ask you what you personally feel is likely to be the biggest challenge facing architecture and well-being in our environments in the wake of COVID-19.
I think it will be encouraging people to take sort of risk again, and I don't mean that in a sort of outside of their comfort zone, but to encourage people to you know, we've all been sort of hidden away, we've been safe at home, well, not all of us, there's plenty, of course, there's lots of people who put their lives at risk by doing some very important jobs, but many of us in our profession, you know, have been working in a very different way. So I think it's about encouraging people to kind of breathe again, but to do so in a way that encourages that they feel safe and able to sort of confront the new world in a positive way.
Yeah. Have you been in London throughout lockdown?
Yes, I've been in London throughout lockdown, and I am, I've begun to understand how lucky I have been to have a small terrace, which means I can, I've been able to go outside. I live around many council estates where, others aren't so lucky. So I'm very grateful for what I've had, and I appreciate, I appreciate my home in a way that I probably haven't, before. And I think that's the same for all of us. And we need to take the things, we need to take those feelings of gratefulness. We need to encourage to learn the positive lessons out, from looking after our communities to understanding and caring and be thankful to others. When we clap on a Thursday night, all of that sort of sense of togetherness and goodwill, I think will get us through what's going to be a very difficult next couple of years.
Yeah, exciting. And if manufacturers like VitrA wanted to get involved with the foundation, how might they be able to help?
I think we're always looking for, kind of partners. We're looking for people who share the same values as us, who might be interested in supporting some of the research that we're doing, or being, sort of, we're a grant-funded organisation. We rely, we rely on others for financial support. But I think what's very exciting is that we really are filling a void. And as an industry, whether or not you're a developer, a manufacturer, or anybody who's part of trying to improve people's health and well-being, VitrA being a very good example of that, then to be part of an organization that's actively making change, I think is a very exciting prospect.
So it's about people working together.
Absolutely. We can only, we're a tight, we're a small cog, but I think if we can leverage, if that small cog can turn much bigger, the much bigger machine, then we'll be doing our job properly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure.